You know, in the middle of all the noise surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, sometimes the biggest changes happen almost silently. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. The Israeli government recently made a decision about land in the West Bank that could fundamentally reshape the entire territory, but you probably haven't heard much about it. So, what is this quiet change, and why is it such a big deal? Let's get into it.
I mean, just look at this claim from Mondaways. They're saying this isn't just some small policy tweak. They're framing it as a move that could effectively legalize the annexation of a huge majority of the West Bank. That really raises the stakes for what might on the surface look like a simple administrative procedure.
So, what kicked all this off? It was a single cabinet decision made back in May of 2025. This one move restarted a land registration process that had been totally frozen for over half a century, basically throwing the whole idea of who owns what into complete chaos for a huge part of the West Bank. And that really gets us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? What did this decision actually do, and why are people's interpretations of it so wildly different? Well, to figure that out, we first need to understand the place where this is all happening. Everything, and I mean everything, revolves around a territory called Area C. Its unique status is exactly why this one decision is having such massive ripple effects. All right, to get a handle on this, you have to see how the West Bank is divided. Back in the 90s, the Oslo Accords split the territory into three zones. You've got areas A and B, which is where most Palestinians live, and the Palestinian Authority has different levels of control there. But then there's Area C. As you can see, it's massive, over 60% of the entire West Bank, and it's under full Israeli civil and military control. And Area C isn't just big, it's incredibly important. It has the best farmland, the most valuable water resources. It's the heartland of the territory. It's also home to about 300,000 Palestinians, as well as a growing number of Israeli settlements. So you have these communities living right next to each other, all under Israeli authority. Okay, so with that background, let's look at what actually changed. This Israeli government decision wasn't about drawing new lines on a map. Nope. It was about fundamentally changing the rules for how you prove you own the land within those lines. So let's break this down. Before, the whole land registration system was frozen, locked in place by a military order from 1967, and the military was in charge. Now, that freeze is over. But, and this is a huge but, it's being handled by Israeli civilian agencies. That's a critical shift. It looks a lot less like a temporary military occupation and a lot more like permanent state administration. And here's the real kicker. Land titles issued by the Palestinian Authority are now considered null and void. That means Palestinian landowners have to prove their claims all over again, from scratch, directly to Israeli authorities. Now, this whole new burden of proof is a nightmare because land ownership here has an incredibly long and tangled history. Proving your family has owned a piece of land for generations isn't as simple as just pulling out a single clean deed. Let's just quickly trace how we got here. It all starts way back in 1858 with the Ottoman Empire, whose new land laws were often ignored by local farmers. Then, you jump to 1967 when Israel occupies the West Bank and just freezes that whole messy process in time. The Oslo Accords in the 90s create Area C, and that brings us right up to 2025 where the freeze is finally lifted, but under a totally different set of rules. Policy debates and history lessons are one thing, right? But what does this actually feel like for the people living there, whose families have worked this land for generations? This quote from a Palestinian landowner really says it all. It captures this deep sense of loss. For so many people, those land deeds from the Palestinian Authority were their proof, their hope for protecting their property. And now, just like that security is gone. It feels like all that hope was for nothing. And it's important to remember, this policy isn't happening in a vacuum. The situation is already incredibly tense. According to a report from Doctors Without Borders, nearly 2,900 Palestinians have been displaced from their homes just since the start of 2023 because of things like settler violence and restrictions on their movement. This new policy just adds another heavy layer of legal and bureaucratic pressure onto a community that's already facing so much. So this brings us right to the heart of the debate. Is this just a legitimate, long overdue administrative cleanup? Or is it something else entirely, a kind of stealth annexation happening right in front of us? The two sides could not see it more differently. From the Israeli government side, the language is pretty direct. The finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said this is about Israel taking responsibility for the territory as a permanent sovereign. That wording, permanent sovereign, is key. It frames this not as some temporary measure, but as an assertion of lasting control. But then you have a completely opposite view. The Israeli anti-settlement group Peace Now calls it a mega theft. Their argument is simple. Because it's so incredibly difficult for Palestinians to prove ownership under this new system, the process is basically designed to lead to a mass transfer of private Palestinian land over to the Israeli state. But supporters of the decision will tell you this didn't just come out of nowhere. Mitchell Barak, who used to be an aide to Prime Minister Netanyahu, says this was a necessary response. He argues the Palestinian Authority was trying to register land in Area C themselves, which he says was a violation of the Oslo Accords. For Palestinian legal experts, though, the debate is already over. Abdullah Hamad from the Jerusalem Legal Aid Center puts it very bluntly. This is annexation. He argues that the legal mechanics of it, shifting control to civilian bodies, invalidating Palestinian documents, that is the act of annexation, already in progress. So we're left with this huge, unresolved question. Is this just a bureaucratic update to a broken system, a way to bring some legal clarity, or is this a quiet but calculated move that uses administrative tools to achieve a massive political goal, basically absorbing Area C into Israel for good and maybe making a future two-state solution impossible? It seems the answer depends entirely on who you ask.